Okay, I think, yeah, we are live. Cool.
Great. And today I'll be presenting I'll be handling the demos. The devs will be presenting them. And for the last week we had Julia and Joseph and Jamaica and Becky. Who wants to start?
I think I will start because our view is the first one.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so this is the homepage. It's not styled now, but we go to create a list, and then it will be shown the first view of the item list view. It's nothing inside. My team was creating the header for both views and the body of the item view. Here you can see that we have this button with an hover effect. When I go to the items list, it's also the header with the same styling. And I will create a list now with a Pikachu zoom and a Glomanda kind of zoom to show the different colors on the other side, and a Shige not zoom. When we switch back to the list view, now there is this. This was already, the search bar was already there. It's styled, with a background and what is this? The focus. And when we search for an item, then this button appears. And this is also in the same color, and then the list is also has the full view again. But when you look, then it's the view with the part for the button. Okay, and for the items, we took. We go with the
time command.
And so this means that Pikachu was soon. It's the darkest one. It will be the darkest one, and it's also lined through. Then Glomanda was kind of soon. It's a little bit lighter, and Shige was not soon. And it has the lightest color. This is for the optic, and it doesn't really change when for me the header and the body doesn't change when I change the width. Only the icon is a little bit has a little bit margin when we widen the view. And to the code, we inserted some icons. Some SVGs. In here, we did an image folder. We created an image folder, and we inserted the icons with as a component with the import React component, and this is the name of the self-created name of the icon, and with the insert with the URL from the icon, and then we could use it in our code as a component, as you can see here. For example, the home icon, which is this one. And we choose Tailwind CSS for the styling. This means that most of the time we do inline style. These are kind of the basics which Tailwind CSS have. We can also do different styling with plugins, for example, but for now, I think we were good with only the inline styles. And I also separated it for the styling into 3 parts. It's the header part, then the main part, and the footer part. So 3 different parts for one view now. Yes, I think this was it.
That's great that you used the tags. You didn't just use divs, you used semantic tags like header, footer, main. That's very good. And you said you picked Tailwind. Why did you like the visual style? You find it easy to use?
My personal chosen reason was that Tailwind is very popular, and that's why I think we shouldn't just go with CSS, because when I do, for example, searching for job applications, they never just want CSS. They always want be good with Bootstrap or be good with Tailwind or SCSS. So I think we have to choose something, and then we go with Tailwind CSS.
Yep, that's a good idea. I mean, they ask
Yes,
for
can I add
Tailwind.
something?
Yes, Joseph, please.
Okay, to add to what Julia said, we had a meeting early this week, so we decided to go with Tailwind because, like she said, it is popular in the React community. I think it would be a good idea to have it in one's resume or CV. Probably it will help. And then secondly, it will help us learn something new. Among the four of us, I don't think any of us had ever used Tailwind before. We were writing CSS all along. So it is a good opportunity to explore something new and learn. This is a perfect opportunity to learn because you are doing the app. You have the chance to ask somebody easily if you get stuck. Basically, those are the two reasons why we chose Tailwind over CSS or any other framework. Thank you.
Yeah, true.
Yep, that was good thinking. That it was good for you to practice, and it also offers a lot of features. And you know, it's good. It's good to also know how to write plain CSS. That's also useful, but it's also useful to know how to use a CSS framework. And in this time, I really liked the hover effect, that the input box becomes green when you click in it. I mean, not the hover, the focus effect. That would look really nice. Yeah, that one, and the border that becomes green. I have a small. I noticed something that the checkboxes are very small. I'm not sure if they were, and I didn't notice while doing code review. This might be an issue in mobile, because in mobile you generally need to have bigger checkboxes.
I think it's an issue from Tailwind, and I have to put a plugin to make it bigger. And these are the standard checkboxes.
Okay. I mean, the trash icon and the home icon, they are a very good size, and it's very easy to click them in mobile.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, great work. Great choice of colors.
Did you all have a chance to run it through the accessibility checker, that like Chrome extension?
Oh, no, we didn't do that.
I might recommend doing that. There's a couple, I think that probably at least the header font color contrast might need some improvement here. And there might be a couple other things too, but I would just run it through that and see what it suggests. And maybe as you're working through next week, try and take care of any accessibility issues. You'll learn more about it today.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, today we will have presentation about accessibility, and we will also demo how to run through the accessibility inside Chrome extension, and it's going to be very helpful for sure.
I love that. Another thing that I love is I'm so impressed that y'all are using Tailwind. I see that so much at Collab Lab and in the React community on Twitter and stuff, and people do seem to love it so much. And I've never used it, so I see it and I'm like, what is this? It's so impressive. It looks beautiful. I do think, like Golfo was mentioning, there's a lot of power in understanding vanilla CSS too, because when you better understand exactly what that CSS is doing and get really familiar with CSS at its core, using these frameworks becomes a lot easier because you can better visualize what those frameworks are doing. So super impressed that you use this. Don't ever forget about vanilla CSS. It's really great too, but this is a really powerful skill for you all to have too in using these frameworks. Great job.
Yep.
So
yeah,
does anybody?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add. Yeah, it's also great to use Tailwind because you need to also configure the framework on your app, and I know we were running with some issues while configuring this, so it's also a great experience to kind of learn if there are some issues even in production when you implement these kind of frameworks. So it's gonna be like great learning experience in terms of that as well.
Yep, and speaking of production, I liked the comment that Joseph made in Slack that, some problems came up with Netlify. This teaches us to never deploy on a Friday. And yes, that's a very important lesson.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Julia and Joseph or any observations? So if not, thank you very much, Julia and Joseph. And now let's move on to Becky and Chimaka.
All right, Chimaka, do you want to present or shall I?
Okay, you can go ahead.
Me, okay, that's fine. I will share my screen. So our issue was to add Tailwind, style the add items view, so the other view component, and also the nav bar at the bottom. So this was our design at the beginning of the week. And this is the final for this week view. So we've got the nav bar at the bottom. So we've got the SVGs that we imported for these two icons, and so yeah, we've got the shadow property as well, and then within the add item view we styled the text box, the text, and also on the, I'll show you the save this. On the desktop view, adding the hover to the button, and then at the bottom, yeah, we've got the two buttons here, which are slightly different from the mobile view. So we've got go to list to switch between the shopping list and add an item. So that's slightly different from the mobile view. So to do that, I'll just go to the code. So we installed Tailwind into the application. We generally, as Julia said as well, we used the utility classes within Tailwind to sort of achieve all the effects that we needed to. So yeah, we've got long lists of class names here, which kind of do the job that we needed to do. We added the SVGs in and imported those as we go to the so we imported those as React components, which is something that I learned from Julia this week as well. So just putting them in their own files, importing those as React components, which is really useful to keep kind of this code fairly clean in terms of readability. The one thing that we did have to do sort of manually was the shadow effects. The Tailwind ones that sort of came out of the box weren't quite what we wanted, so we did have to add some configuration within the Tailwind config. So here we've got sort of the extra effects that we needed just to make sure that we had the right shadows that we wanted on the buttons. But that was fairly easy to do. And yeah, it was quite useful to learn that as well in terms of using sort of an additional layer of Tailwind. Yeah, and I think that covers everything. Any questions?
I just want to comment that I like how you put the screenshot in a device mockup, so it looks like it's actually in a mobile phone. Also that you import the icons as React components, because right now you are using simple icons, but maybe in the future you want to use something else. And this way it's really easy to replace the icon or maybe put in a button instead of an icon or text. So it's a real nice choice. And about the shadows, did you use a tool or did you do it manually? Did you try out values, fill in the values?
To put together the configuration here, yeah, we used kind of the ones that Tailwind had, that came with Tailwind, and then we sort of just adjusted them to try and make it look as we wanted to. Yeah, it didn't seem like there was that much flexibility within the Tailwind sort of shadows that came with it. So yeah, it's just quite useful to know, because I'm sure that will come up again if we use Tailwind again.
I was just asking because whenever I use shadows, I either copy a shadow from somewhere online or use a generator. I can never make my own shadows.
Oh no, that's probably a good idea.
We are testing the values and then checking the browser to see what it gives.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems to work. It's quite fairly quick in terms of but
I mean, it's good. It's good to learn how to do it, but sometimes it's not very practical.
Yeah, also good to learn how to find things to copy and paste. So
yeah, exactly.
I too love that you're using those SVGs as React components. Like using SGVs is so amazing. They load so much faster, so they're great for performance and they're great for responsiveness as you scale your screens. So really great choice there. Like I said before, this looks amazing. I'm so impressed.
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks very good. And I have a question. This is for the four of you. How did you work on your estimates? I mean, it's you did an amazing job on creating the issues. So I'm very curious, when you were creating an issue, how did you think that, okay, this will take me a week? Because it's something very difficult to do, to make estimations for a project.
So hard.
It was quite hard, given the fact that none of us had used Tailwind before as well, so we didn't know how long that would take. So yeah, I think we sort of made quite conservative estimates in terms of just not trying to overstretch ourselves. But yeah, it was hard to estimate without knowing how much work it would be to learn Tailwind. But I think it worked out reasonably okay in terms of timing.
Yeah, but I'm very impressed. I mean, this is the first issues you made, and you were spot on with the estimation. So congratulations.
That's conservative estimations every single time, because they will always take longer than you think. So great job.
Yep, because you can't think about everything in advance. Problems pop up, so you need to leave some space for unexpected things. Okay. So anybody has something to add? Any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So the SVGs, did someone like Julia, did you create those SVGs, or were they kind of generated somewhere online?
Yeah, did you go with the one I created? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it was the one you sent.
In Figma.
Okay.
We exported the Figma pictures as SVG.
Nice. That's awesome.
You actually created icons. I didn't know that. That is awesome.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, this is not a question, but I would like to say that Julia is very amazing at these things. And she produced that wonderful design for us, which we are using alone, right from the beginning of the program. She has been working on that design. So thank you so much, Julia, for all the hard work you're putting in producing that design. We are really grateful. And,
Thank you.
And I'd like to admit that actually the whole of this week I took the back seat. Julia was mostly working on those designs, and I was learning from her. So thank you so much, Julia. In fact, if you want to consult somebody about styling, design, I think she's the right person to talk to. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.
That's great that each of you have different strengths. For instance, as Joseph said, Julia's strength is design. Joseph, I think you are more code-oriented. So you two complement each other.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
That's awesome. So you started off amazing for this past week, and now you have another week to add some more improvements. Yep, keep up the good work. And,
I have a question. How was the experience with Krakow?
We don't even know what it does. We just saw it was part of the configuration for Tailwind. I'm not really sure what it does, but we just downloaded it and it works. So we don't know much
Yeah,
about
yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, okay. The purpose of Krakow is actually to override the configuration that comes with Great React App, so that you are able to use Tailwind together with React. Otherwise, if you don't use Krakow, Tailwind will fail to work with your app. So essentially, its purpose is to override the default configuration which comes with Great React App. Okay, it is kind of strange. It is our first time to use it, but it's also a very good learning experience that you can override what comes with the CLI and learn how to configure some things by yourself. It was a good experience.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
was it only at the time of deployment that you guys realized that okay, you need to use this Krakow, or was it even during the development?
No, it was part of
No,
the configuration
Yeah.
recommended by Tailwind and React. We just googled how to configure Tailwind in a React project, and that documentation came up and it really worked.
Yeah, I believe it was part of the documentation also, like
Yeah.
to like while how to install the framework. Um, but the issues also we had was that when we npm installed Krakow, it automatically installed the newest version of it, which was not read by React because it was like very new, and I think React wasn't updated after. So we had to actually like downgrade the version of Krakow to let it like run properly. So it was also a great debugging experience with it.
Yeah, I could imagine this would be such a good experience, like all the compatibility issues and everything,
Yeah, for
the
sure.
dependencies. So yeah, sounds good.
Because you might need to configure build tools in the future. And the most important thing is not to panic when you see some strange error messages. You might see a ton of error messages, and usually the fix might be just one line or something. So
Yep.
it's really important not to panic. Anybody else wants to add something? Or are we ready for the accessibility module?
Okay, let's do it.
We're ready. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will not go to the presentation mode because I will need to jump between the browsers, between the tabs. Yeah, let's do it. So accessibility is a very exciting topic for me, and I hope after this learning module it will be exciting for you as well, and you will be able to make your app more accessible. So this topic I will present in the context of what, why, and how. In other words, what is accessibility? Why is it important to make our websites and mobile applications more accessible? And how to make them accessible. So first thing, you may have seen this hashtag. It's A11Y. It's not LI or LA. It's actually A11Y. So it's like a shortened version of accessibility. And the reason why it was shortened this way is that there are 11 characters between letter A and Y. So yeah, it's a quite cool way to shorten it. And if you want to tweet about it, it's easier to hashtag A11Y and just tweet or talk about in different channels. So what is accessibility? In basic terms on Wikipedia, web accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites on the World Wide Web by people with physical disabilities, situational disabilities, and socio-economic restrictions on bandwidth and speed. When sites are correctly designed, developed, and edited, generally all users have equal access to information and functionality. So as we mentioned, there are different kinds of disabilities, such as physical, situational, and socio-economic restrictions. And we will talk more about it in the coming slides. But in terms of the W3C, which is Worldwide Consortium, it maintains a working group dedicated to web accessibility and publishes related standards. And these standards are called WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So it's a great resource to kind of research more if you want to find the proper ways to make your websites accessible. And these guidelines were, I think, adopted. It was created in the US, but I think a lot of countries adopted those guidelines, such as Canada, many countries in South America, many countries in Europe, Australia, I think. So it's very popular around the world. So more about what? In the US, Section 508, which is a Disability Act, requires government agencies to make websites accessible to people with disabilities. So it requires only government agencies, and it doesn't require private sector. But the trend is that private sectors will be more likely also required to use kind of at least some level of accessibility on their websites. In terms of Canada, they also have this have the Disability Act, which was created in 2005, and they have more strict kind of requirements that requires all the public sector and private or non-profit organizations with more than 50 employees to have accessible websites by January 2021, which is already time actually. So it's interesting to know like how this implementation happens in Canada. And those who fail to comply could face fines up to $100,000 for each day of violation, which is quite a big amount of money for a day of violation. In Europe, in European Union countries, there is a web accessibility directive that was created in 2016, and it requires all EU member countries to comply with the directive and make public service websites accessible to people with disabilities by 2020 to 2021. And it also includes not only websites, but the mobile applications as well. And Norway is notorious of having the strictest kind of requirement in terms of web accessibility. In 2014, they required both public and private sector to make websites accessible under this body called DIFI. And there is a story that in 2000, there is a Norwegian airline called SAS. And you can read more about in this article, but briefly to tell you, there is this Norwegian airline that was required to, so they updated their homepage in 2017, and it wasn't accessible at all. It had like major failures in terms of accessibility, and they were asked to improve the website, which they didn't do, and they were told that they would be fined by $15,000 per day of violation. So it's very strict in Norway as well. So some people with disabilities access websites using assistive technologies. These include screen readers, screen magnifiers, speech input, and assistive keyboards. For example, assistive keyboards could be like a special joystick for people who don't have limbs, and they might need to use their like gym to kind of navigate with the joystick. And also we have Braille display, which is literally it's a machine that that creates brailles while you are reading text on the website. So if you have like sight and hearing disability, you might need to read the text with touch. So the brailles display allows you to do that. So popular screen readers include NVDA, which is a free tool and one of the most famous out there. There is also JAWS on Windows, and VoiceOver, which is included into the Mac OS. So why we need to make websites accessible? On the highest level, is the right thing to do to provide equitable access to information for everyone. And also you might be legally obligated to make your websites accessible, as we've seen in Norway, and now Canada also legally requires everyone to have accessible websites. More people in the US access websites with assistive technologies than live in Canada. So it's a big amount of people, big group of people who access website with some kind of assistive technologies. And in European Union, 1 in 4 people are disabled. So that's a very big amount of, that's a huge amount of people also who have disabilities. And in the entire world, there are about 1 billion people who have some kind of disabilities, which is about 15% of the world population. So you can imagine how many people are accessing websites with some kind of assistive technologies. And some estimate that 20% of website visitors have some sort of disability. And finally, making your pages more accessible for people with disabilities makes them more accessible to everyone. Meaning that this might, if you make your website more accessible, it will be more structured well in terms of HTML structure. It will be designed well. It will look better because you can easily read. You can make color contrast better. So it's better for everyone to have accessible websites. So this graph is by Microsoft, and Microsoft has done great work in accessibility in general. And we will see also this accessibility inside Chrome extension, which was also developed by Microsoft. But this graph shows us different kinds of disabilities that people have, and it is kind of divided into 3 parts. There are permanent disabilities, there are temporary disabilities, and situational disabilities. And on the left, we have some sites like touch, see, hear, and speak. So permanent disability can be 1 arm. Someone can be born with 1 arm. This person might need some kind of assistive technology to navigate the web. In terms of temporary, you might break your arm. So temporarily, you may not be able to type or use the mouse with 1 hand or another. At this point, you might also need to use some kind of assistive technology. And there are also situational disabilities. For example, new parent, you might be holding your baby in your arms. So in this case, you would also need to have some kind of machine or instrument to help you better navigate the web. Okay. Yeah, so how can we make web more accessible, or how can we make our websites more accessible? So these practices will not make your websites 100% accessible, but this is definitely a great starting point. And if you implement these practices, you will definitely be better off and ready to have much more accessible website than without those practices. And some of the practices are to use valid semantic HTML. And this is quite relatable because we had discussions in our PRs to use semantic HTML. Even today, Julia showed some refactored code that had header, main, footer as the HTML tags. So it is very important to follow the structure and use elements that that actually clarify the content that section of the website has. So semantic HTML tag would be header, article, the form tag, and non-semantic HTML tags would be the div, the span, because these HTML tags don't provide much content. It's just there to use to kind of create the structure. But for those non-semantic HTML tags, you can use ARIA attributes, which I'll talk in a bit. So the second point is to always include alt attributes on your image tag. So it's the image tags. So we need to think about alt attributes because we might have images for purely like decorative purposes. So these kind of images may not have alt text inside, but we still need to have the alt attribute with empty string. If we are kind of displaying image that has some content, then we definitely need some text and description inside the alt. So yeah, just be mindful when you are using image tag to have these alts, and be mindful to either leave as an empty string or have some description inside it. So the ARIA tag or ARIA attribute is an accessible rich internet applications. So it's a set of attributes that define ways to make web content and web applications more accessible, especially when you are building or when you are developing applications with JavaScript. But there is this great quote here that says, the best area is not area at all. We need to use semantic HTML whenever possible. So you might be tempted to use div and then inside div use ARIA to describe why you are using that div or what this div is used for. But the best would be to use semantic HTML instead of randomly choosing the div tag. Such as like if you're creating a form, maybe use form tag. And if you're creating an article section, maybe use article tag. Next point is to ensure all content is reachable via keyboard. And we will see more of this during the demo, but yeah, we need to, this is also connected with the fifth practice, which is to ensure content and tab ordering makes sense. So when we tab over on the website, we should make sure that the tab is following the right structure. It's not just jumping around the web randomly. It's not choosing like random sections of the page, but it just structurally follows the web page. And we will see more about this during the demo. But the idea is that when we use Flexbox or Grid, we might move things around easily with it, but the structure may not be right. as we intend to have. So best way to test is to switch off the CSS at this point. First test the HTML structure, and then kind of add the CSS styling back to your application. Also use sufficient color contrast. So visually impaired people might have difficulties to see the contrast. This is something that Stacy mentioned in the beginning of your demos. Yeah, it's for people who have perfect sight, it might be visible, but with someone who even uses sight glasses, it might be a bit difficult to see the contrast between the background color and the button color, for example. So yeah, choose the right color palette to make it more visible in terms of contrast. And finally, don't use only color to signify state. So we actually, in the previous issues, we had one of the ACs that asked to create ARIA labels for the items, like how soon they are supposed to be purchased for, because in our list we have different colors to signify the state of the item. But if you remember, we also had in the AC to create ARIA that also described in what state that specific item is. We have the color to differentiate, but we also have text for people who are reading through our HTML. We have this description as well. And yeah, let's move on. So how to identify accessible issues for remediation? There are automated tools such as X, which is a good starting tool, but it only finds 30% of issues. I think X is a tool that Lighthouse was built on. It's Lighthouse is built in Chrome browser for accessibility findings. So it is a great tool, but it only finds 30% of the issues. We also have guided audits such as what's built into Accessibility Insights Chrome extension. And this is the tool we are going to use during the demos. Audits by accessible testers by companies such as Fable Tech Labs. So this is probably the best way to test if your website is fully accessible. So Fable Techs is a company where actually disabled people work, and they manually test your website to see if there are some sections that cannot be accessed by visually impaired people or by some tools that disabled people use. Also navigate your website via keyboard that we mentioned before, and I will demonstrate this during the demo. And there is also a tool, like this is a free tool called Wave. You can actually copy and paste, you can actually paste in the URL of your website, and it will show you some insights directly on the page with a lot of details, how to fix it, what is the failure of the accessibility, and so on. Okay, let's demo. Let's demo this. So I chose Stack Overflow to demonstrate how inaccessible the websites can be. I mean, this is a website that we developers use all the time, but they are notorious with not being accessible. So I have the accessibility inside Chrome extension here, and I will press Fast Pass. There are different options as well you can use. but I will demonstrate FastPass right now. This up here. So it automatically scans the website and gives you some insights. So as you can see, we have like 1,162 failed color contrasts on Stack Overflow, and the extension actually shows all the sections where it failed. So yeah, basically you can see how purely inaccessible this homepage of Stack Overflow is. So you can also press this little like a red failed rules, and it will show you in detail what is the problem and how to fix it and how to inspect. So here you can read that element has insufficient color contrast of 3.14. So the ratio, expected contrast ratio is 4.5 to 1. And they totally fail on those sections. We can also click this inspect HTML. So if I open up my tool, yeah. So yeah, if I press it, it will automatically find this HTML tag for me, so I don't have to kind of browse through the whole HTML structure. For example, if I choose this one, inspect HTML, it will directly jump into that HTML tag, and you can read, like identify what the issue is, and go back to your code and kind of fix it with right color palettes in this case, or right color contrasts. Yeah, what I also love about this extension is that while you inspect these inaccessible parts or the failures, you at the same time you read a lot about the failures, so you learn what are the things that can fail your accessibility on the website. This extension also has this tab stops. This is really neat tool. So if we turn this on and go back to the page, so I'm gonna tab over, press tab, and it shows yeah, it shows how the structure follows in terms of HTML. So I don't know, you can kind of see that it goes through like a bunch of different sections. For example, the header first, and then to the actual content. Yeah, I think it does a pretty good job in terms of tabbing over, because it's kind of logical to first tab over to the search section, and then maybe the navigation, and then to the actual content. We also have this assessment section that has all the details in terms of like landmarks, heading functions, links, custom widgets, tons of information to test your website. So if we go to landmarks, and let's turn this off. Yeah, we can see all these different sections, such as like search, navigation, and all the way to the bottom we have this footer. We also have headings. So if we go to, oops. Yeah, So headings also shows all this information, such as like H1, where is H1? Like H2, H3. And you can kind of evaluate if this is the right thing to do. So because yeah, we have, yeah. Okay, yeah, you can and you should definitely try this out. It's a super cool extension, and it gives you a lot of information and educates you in terms of accessibility, and automatically helps you to easily just in a couple of minutes identify what are some issues you are having and jump back to your code and fix them. I also want to quickly demonstrate this us.gov website. So as I mentioned, so US government agencies are required to have accessible websites. So if we test this, you see that they have a 0 failure, which is amazing. No failure in terms of accessibility insights. And oops, yeah, I took too much time, but sorry. Last slide here, we have tons of readings. If you want to learn more about accessibility, here are some resources you can check out and read, and definitely try out Accessibility Insight extension. And yeah, that's about it in my end. Any questions?
It looks like there was a request to run the extension on the Teams app, Luka.
Oh, let's do it. I think I'm running it localhost. Yeah. Ooh, better than Stack Overflow.
Name 12 button name, color contrast, get ID error. Oh.
This is great. And like Luka was saying, this extension explains brilliantly exactly how to fix these issues. So like you see these errors and you get kind of scared, like, I don't even know what that means. But if you like pop into those drop downs that they give you, it gives you everything you need to know. It gives you the documentation on how to do it. It's super helpful. And this process of running this extension here at Collab Lab and in all of your future positions should totally be a part of every ticket that you do. So before you put a PR up for review, run this extension on it and like work accessibility into your everyday life, because it's going to be so much easier than going back when you're going through a lawsuit and implementing accessibility. So just do it in advance, have empathy for your users, and know that all of us in some way, even if it's just a temporary disability, experience these apps with a disability at some point. And I love that graph that was in the presentation, Luka, that had all the different types of disabilities, because it really helps you see that it is all of us. Even like if you're developing an app that needs to be used when somebody's driving or when somebody's walking through a busy city, it's like you want to make sure that things are, you know, really quickly visible and able to be used from somebody's phone. So it's little things like that accessibility can even play a really large role in. So accessibility is so important. Another thing that I like to mention during this presentation specifically is that this is a really great way to start dipping your toes in open source work if you're interested in doing any open source work. So you find an open source project, you can run it through the accessibility tracker. And if you find anything wrong with it, you can implement those fixes. And in your PR description, this tool has loaded you with tons of really great insight on why you're making that fix that you can put in your description to make your PR look really buttoned up and convincing. And you're contributing to such an important piece of the puzzle that maybe somebody who was developing before had forgotten. So
it's a great idea.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Just quickly going back to this graph, I also wanted to mention that as you implement those accessibility tools for people who are permanently disabled, you are automatically fixing those issues for people who are temporarily disabled and situational disabled. So it's absolutely great to do it.
I can't tell you how many times as a mom, when I was like breastfeeding a baby, I got so frustrated because I'd be using these huge phones and I couldn't reach all the way across to hit a button with my thumb. I'm like, my thumb doesn't go that far. So like, put the button somewhere closer. But left-handed users too. It's another kind of like situational accessibility thing. That user might be using it like, that button's fine for me, but this other one's not. So it's like, how do we make this perfect for everyone? It is a challenge, but we gotta try.
For sure. How is your experience in terms of accessibility, everyone? Have you ever tried to, I don't know, implement or test anyways? I don't know.
I didn't
Yeah,
test.
so I was working on.
Go ahead, Chima.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't know about the Chrome extension, but I knew about Lighthouse before now. It also has a section where they
It's 7 o'clock.
It also has a section where they show about the show accessibility information about the app you're trying to check. Lighthouse.
Yeah, Lighthouse is good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing. I know that you all created some issues for the coming week. Do you want to share them with us and tell a little bit about it, how you are planning to implement them?
I mean, we didn't have our meeting for now, but yet, yeah, but I was figuring something out on Google Docs, where everyone has the accessibility access to it. And I thought of going with two teams, one coding team and one styling team. And for the coding team, yeah, it would be, as for Joseph already mentioned, maybe some stuff is not that good looking. So they would rearrange the code and go with the utils folder and the extra functions to separate them, and everything about the code. And for the styling team, it would be, we have to start a home view. To maybe when we go with the models, then we have to style the models.
And the home icon.
What?
The home icon.
Yeah. For the coding team, they have to make the function or not if you decide to go with the home return thing. And for the styling team, I would also suggest to make the accessibility thing. To the fonts, the links you will post hopefully after our meeting will be a great help. Inserting the area labels to everyone who are using semantic HTML. And for both teams, when we do our pull request, to do the cross-browser testing for Firefox, Edge, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, whatsoever, and the desktop mobile testing. I think this would be for both teams. Yeah, I think we are going like this, but we will tomorrow.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, that sounds really thoughtful. I love it. One thing that I want to call out too, and you may have heard this a million times before, but when you come across little issues in your app, like these accessibility things, for example, go into GitHub issues and create an actual bug report for that, because it can demonstrate to future employers that you're really thoughtful about the way that you're approaching these problems. So document what the problem is, what you think the solution is, and then when you have the PR to close that issue, just be sure to mention it there so that you could go into an interview and you could be like, I had this concern about the way that our app was inaccessible. I created a bug, I fixed the problem, I closed the bug with a PR, and it shows kind of the full life cycle of your workflow. So I would encourage you to create bugs for each of those things if you have time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a good idea.
One thing I could add as well is now our README file is there has been like some template from create React app in the README. So that could also be modified to make sure that it is aligned with what our project is.
I love that so much.
I wasn't sure if we do the README. Okay, but now I'm sure.
This is fully your app. You do what
Okay.
you want, anything you want with this app. It's yours now. It's yours forever. If you want to continue working on it a year from now, do it. It is totally yours. But yeah, like Muhammad, that is such a great call. It's a really great idea in your READMEs too, to tell people how to fire up your app. So if you do use this in a job interview or something, there's probably an interviewer who's going to go in and look at your GitHub work, and they're going to look at this app and be like, oh, I want to run this locally to see how it works. And then give them detailed instructions on how to, you know, pull it down and update the packages and fire it up locally. It can be really helpful for them and can show that you're.
Great, thanks.
I have an idea too, that until now, have you shown the app to, I don't know, your friends, your family, somebody outside the team? Because it would be nice now to get some insights from a fresh pair of eyes. Because I mean, all we in the Collab Lab, we are too involved in this project, and you know, we have a specific viewpoint. Try asking your friends and family to test the app.
I love that. Yeah, have them test it, and if they come back with feedback, create a GitHub issue for it. Because like, even if those GitHub issues live on forever and they never get closed, you still, again, have this like beautiful piece of documentation that shows you know how to write for a team, you know how to write for improvements, and that you care about your users. Like Golfo was saying, ask real users. I love that.
Especially if it's non-technical people, like have your grandma test it out. I mean, maybe your grandma is a web developer, I don't know, but you know, have her try it out.
I wish, Golfo, I wish. I would be more skilled for sure if I get more.
We might not have to work if our grandmothers had been developers back in their day. Be sitting on that Microsoft money right now. All right. Well, great. Sounds like you guys really have your stuff together. I love it.
Sure.
Proud of you.
And great demos. You did great demos for sure.
Amazing.
And you really improved between your first demos and now. You can really describe how the app works, describe your thought flow. It's really great.
I love it. Yeah, Joseph, like I love the way that you jump into to explain, like there were a few times in demos where you jumped in, like, I'm going to explain this from my point of view. And it's like such a strong skill to have when you go into like interviewing and stuff, that you're like, I already put together my thoughts on exactly what this is and how it works and stuff. I was like,
That's true.
Great work.
Sure. Any questions before we end the call? All right. Thank you all. Thank you all for great work. And yeah, keep up the good work. And we are in Slack anytime. Please ping us if you need any help.
I love it. So good to see you all. We'll see you soon.
Good to see you, Stacey.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.
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 Bye.